Do you want to know how you can eat the same amount of food, do the same amount of exercise, and still lose weight? I thought you did. So stay listening for the next 2 minutes for some information that's going to totally blow your mind. G'day champions, my name's Stuart Stone, this is Health and Fitness Over 40, and our commitment to you this year is to help you to be the best version of yourself that you can imagine. And during January, we're going to give you some simple life hacks to help you maximize the benefit from the health choices that you are making.
Okay, so let's look at some of the research. Timing of food intake predicts weight loss effectiveness. So what did they do? They looked at 420 people who followed a 20-week weight loss treatment. The only significant difference here was that some of the people, approximately 51% of the people in the study, were early eaters and the other 49% were late eaters. So the demarcation was eating before or after 3 p.m. And just by eating lunch before 3 p.m, you lost more weight and you had faster weight loss than people who ate lunch after 3 p.m. So there's a simple tip for young players. Eat your lunch before 3 p.m. if you want to lose weight more quickly. But wait, there's more. So greater weight loss and hormonal changes after 6 months diet with carbohydrates eaten mostly at dinner time. So they looked at different scales and levels of measuring things. So anthropometric, which is measuring your waist circumference, your hunger levels, and biochemical and inflammatory parameters. Why are inflammatory parameters important? Because if you have a higher level of C-reactive protein and tumor necrosis factor, you have a higher risk for various cancers. Same thing with interleukin 6. So they also looked at hormonal secretion. So let's have a look. Greater weight loss, abdominal circumference, and body mass fat reductions were observed in the experimental diet in comparison to the controls. So the controls didn't demarcate when they ate their carbohydrates. Hunger scores were lower in people who ate carbohydrates later in the day, and greater improvements in fasting glucose, insulin concentrations, and homeostasis model assessment for insulin resistance. T cholesterol, low-density lipoprotein, cholesterol, high-density lipoprotein, cholesterol, C-reactive protein, tumor necrosis factor, and interleukin 6 levels were observed in comparison to controls. So in other words, just by eating most of your carbohydrates later in the day, you end up with better health scores as well as losing more weight, and that can only be a good thing. Now the interesting thing here, this study was done on police officers with a BMI, that's a body mass index of over 30, which means they were obese. The carbohydrates we're talking about, I'm sure that does not include donuts. In other words, when you're eating your carbohydrates later in the day, we're not talking about refined sugar, we're talking about complex carbohydrates. So we're talking about things like sweet potato, like whole grains, okay? Not talking about refined sugars, pavlovas, sugary desserts, ice cream, and so on and so forth. But that's, again, another tip for young players. Now, let's look at the converse of this study. So what happens if you eat your carbohydrates mostly at lunch and proteins mostly at dinner? Does this cause problems, or does it just slow the rate of weight loss? Well, what they found was that there was a detrimental increase in fasting glucose, insulin, and homeostasis model assessment of insulin-resistant levels. Only in the people who ate their carbohydrates at lunchtime, so that's diurnal carbohydrates and nocturnal protein. In other words, eat your carbs at the end of your day. Now obviously some foods have a makeup of protein and carbohydrates, but then there are other foods, like I said, your grains and your rices and your root vegetables, so your yams, your sweet potatoes, and so on and so forth. Eat them in your evening meal, eat your higher protein content during the day. So that's your seeds and nuts, or if you still eat meat, you know you should be decreasing your meat intake, but if you're going to eat some meat, eat it at lunchtime. Eat your carbs at the end of the day, eat your lunch before 3 p.m. Pretty simple stuff, hey?
So here's to your health, and to get more tips like this, just make sure you click on the red heart apple up here to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and go down below into the description box and give our Facebook page a like. And we'll talk to you again soon.